And welcome back to Stairway to Paradise. Alhamdulillah, we're back with another series, and we want to start off by discussing the idea of why religion has unfortunately become negatively associated or associated with negative things in many people's minds today. So, to start us off, we actually went out and asked people, different people, this particular question. What were their answers? Let's find out and be back in a minute to discuss it.
I think they don't want to be religious because it's not cool.
Well, usually in the past, there wasn't really anything that distracted people, but now lately all the fashion and the media and the lifestyle, people are usually distracted to other things other than religions.
Because a lot of Muslims now are they say they're doing God's will, but they do it in a very violent way and they harm people, and then they say they're doing God's justice on earth, which is not really the right way to do it.
Possibly because of the media, they don't see positive role models. They'd like to feel hip, and somehow their peer groups publicize that being religious is not being hip.
I think people are too scared to find out what religious really means.
Okay, we're back, and now we're looking at religion in the postmodern world. Can these two go hand in hand? Can you be a religious person in today's world? What postmodernity is really, you know, not in depth, but just the general characteristics. People feel that it's not in. We asked a lot of people why they thought that was the case. Some said, you know, the modern world is distracting. Others said it's misrepresentation, that religious people tend to misrepresent religion. Shadi Hamid, you're from Pennsylvania?
That's right.
And you're going to start a PhD in?
At Oxford in political science, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah. And Matthew Ingalls from Massachusetts?
Massachusetts originally,
And
yep.
you're doing a PhD in?
Islamic studies.
Okay, well, we have a lot to discuss, inshallah. Off the top of your heads, this story of religion being, people not wanting to be as religious nowadays, associating it with a little bit of a turn-off of a, no, not for me. What's the dilly with that?
I think the answer to the question depends on the cultural context we're speaking of.
Okay.
So let's start with the West.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of people in the West that portray religion as sappy, as overly sentimental, let's say corny.
Give me an example of that.
Oh, it's really hard to take like one of these fire and brimstone preachers who's like, the good Lord cometh, and he is angry. You know, it's comical almost. So it's hard to take those type of guys seriously.
I think religious people also sometimes have the reputation of being kind of very forceful with their opinions, imposing their worldview on others. Mm-hmm. And as someone who was brought up in America, I really value freedom of worship, freedom of expression. So when someone comes and tells me, you know, how to live my life or how to practice my religion, I think there's this kind of natural pullback. You're like, you know, I don't want you telling me that. And I think a lot of religious people might have that problem sometimes.
Which, again, that pullback is really that turn off. Where you kind of, no, you know, I'm not excited, not perky about this. I don't want to hear anything about this. Well, it's very interesting. So you do think that there is misrepresentation?
Yeah, I think.
Well, again, now what characterizes someone? I mean, well, Matt, you're about to say something first.
I was going to say, then there's a reaction to this.
Okay.
And we see this often in modern Islam, fortunately, where people try and portray the deen as really cool. But it's a reaction to the old view where it's corny.
We're not uncool. We're very cool. And then they do things like what?
Like
I'm still laughing at your comment jokes, so take it easy.
These
no,
like
really, what is
these Muslim rap groups that are like...
the boy band?
Right.
The Muslim boy band
bands,
phenomenon.
exactly. Yeah.
Girl, you know, put your hijab on, that kind of thing.
Or more as like you're cool and religious.
What do you mean? So I'm a reaction?
No, I think it's positive.
Well, because no, I mean, I'd respect it even if you thought so, but because what I think Matt was saying was that there's a reaction to it that is a little bit over the top. I think that's where you were going with it.
Unfortunately,
that's why you said unfortunately when you started.
I hate to be, you know, judgmental like Shadi was just criticizing.
No, I agree with you as well, and let's both be judgmental.
Let's be judgmental.
No, let's be objective.
Okay.
There is a reaction, and there are people who try to pretentiously be cool. To kind of say we are cool.
I think that's what we need. We need to have religious people who can still be cool, still be modern, still know how to have a good time with their friends, for example.
Absolutely.
Listen to good music, watch good movies. You know, that's what we need. I think.
Well, I think, you know, Shadi, I think if when you say cool in this context, you mean really cool. You know, then obviously, you know, a religious person can't be out. You know, they're obviously in. They're obviously the coolest people alive. If they really, you know, I mean, they have to be the coolest people in the dunya if they really are in touch with the one who made the dunya, who made the world. But I think that what Matt and I were looking at was more they think they're cool, And so you have guys walking in the street in Cairo looking like they're on MTV, you know, that kind of thing. Remember the comment Sim made about you guys look like you're on MTV?
I remember that.
The common friend between me and Matt who said that last time he was in the Middle East. And so that's what I meant about there being a different kind of coolness that's kind of not really cool.
Yeah, do we want, going back to what you said a minute ago, do we want to be cool or do we want to be somewhat unknown so that we can be really cool in the next life? That's a question. I'm not really suggesting anything with that.
Well, no, it's interesting because under a minute left now, we will wrap up, but I think we should look at that in the next segment. That's a very interesting comment. And I think that what Shadi said as well, I'd like to discuss it with him further when we come back, because, I mean, obviously there are good movies out there, there's good music out there, there are things to listen to, things to watch that will truly benefit you, but most of these, like, I don't even know how to pluralize genre. Would you say genres?
I haven't studied French yet.
Okay, well, this genre in general, most of it will tend to be not Islamically compliant. I mean, if a movie shows nude scenes, for example, that kills the hayat, the modesty, there isn't even a word for hayat in English, but there's bashfulness, timidity, modesty, this feeling of the heart being alive enough to recognize that certain parts of the body shouldn't be seen by others. But anyway, we're getting a little bit controversial here. We'll be back after the break, inshallah, to take it to further heights.
من الناس لا يخططون لذواتهم ولأسرهم.
حتى لو حضرتك معالج.
هذا من خطأنا، أين مصارحة؟ فكرة ترك الزوجة لبيتها في حال وجود مشاكل مع الزوج.
الزوج حط خطة بناء على طموحه ورغباته.
على عقليته. عادة ما في شيء بينبنى بدون مخطط.
لكن تعارف مع الزوجة.
والمرأة لابد أن تعرف أيضا حق الرجل.
لما تكون مشكلة بينها وبين زوجها تقدر هي تحلها.
هذا التصرف غير مقبول.
ما راح تقدر تخطط لي.
من أكبر إشكاليات هذه الأسرة أنهم ما وضعوا تصورات واضحة.
والصلح خير تشاهدونه في هذه الأوقات على قناة اقرأ. مسارات، حديث صريح من قلب الشارع العربي يطرح ويناقش مشاكل وهموم الأمة.
هل الإسلام يدعو إلى إنشاء دولة دينية أم دولة مدنية؟
كلاهما يمثل مفهوما عند الغربيين.
التحدي الذي يواجه اليوم أبناء المسلمين في البلاد العربية الإسلامية لا يبعد كثيرا عما يواجه أبناء المسلمين في الغرب.
وأن المجتمعات السابقة أيضا تعاني من العنف الأسري، فلماذا الآن نتحدث عنها بهذا الشكل وبهذا الكم؟
ينطلق هذا المكبوت الإعلامي السابق فيضرب زوجته.
تحدي الهوية للأجيال المسلمة في الغرب، هل حقا تعيشون هذا التحدي؟
10%
نعم
من المسلمين في الغرب افتقدوا هويتهم الإسلامية.
مسارات تشاهدونه في الأوقات التالية على قناة اقرأ.
Okay, we're back, and I brought up quite a few controversial issues there. What I was trying to say was that there's nothing wrong with watching art, and if a movie, which is the art of telling a story really visually, is going to have beautiful meanings in it, is going to show beauty and manifest a human being at their best, really, I'd love to see it. But if every time I'm watching a movie, you're talking to my lower self and trying to provoke me with nude women or, you know, provoke women with nude men or whatever, then I just think that there's a problem with it, and there is in a limited zone, a little bit of mutual exclusivity there.
Well, Maaz, I think the problem is, though, that a lot of the classic works of literature, classic movies, a lot of them do have sex, violence, and drugs, and I don't think as Muslims we should necessarily close ourselves from that, because that's part of the real world. Sex, violence, and drugs are part of our reality on the daily basis.
Well, so is pornography. Would you show it to your child?
No, but I think movies are supposed to reflect the challenges of everyday life, and I think that's...
Well, beautiful. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. I know a director who tries to portray what you beautifully pointed out. You want to stay real. That's what you're saying. Yeah. And, say he wanted to say that, this character, the protagonist here, is going through a struggle, and, at one point he's going to commit adultery. Yeah. Because it's part of life, and the intention is to cure that. Cure this disease of adultery. For example, he can show the guy and the girl walking into the room, the door closing, and a bunch of hey, hi, whatever, ha, 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 and you'll get the point. But to start dwelling onto the actual scene, clothes, all these taken off, all these different things, is to actually want to sell to me by talking to my lower animalistic self, the bestial self in the human being, and you're not taking me anywhere. In fact, you've provoked a desire, and even if you cure the protagonist in the end, psychologists tell you, you're still turned on, and you're still going to look for that type of beautiful girl in life ad infinitum.
Yeah.
You know, but you did bring up a comment, Matt, earlier that I wanted to look at as well.
I think you're referring to, you know,
the anonymity type.
Yeah, remaining anonymous in this world so that you can be truly cool in the next.
Yes,
I mean,
yes. You had a new definition of cool, and I wanted to hear all about it.
Well, from the Islamic understanding, from my understanding of the Islamic
understanding,
the idea is that the true izzah, the true honor, is going to come in the next life because it's eternal. In this life, you can have name and fame, but you're going to die.
Okay.
And so no matter what, it's limited in how far it can get you.
And finite.
And it's very finite.
Okay.
And also, is that really the purpose of life, to have name and fame? As many people think and have thought it is, that's a question.
Well, many famous actors and actresses do say that they feel horrible because when they made that their goal and then later on grew older, they felt that it was taken away from them unfairly almost. Then they realized they shouldn't have wanted it in the first place. I've heard a lot of them say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just with all the desires of the world, whatever they may be, love of money, love of...
well, lust in general
lust,
is a desire.
And whatever it may be. Love of food,
compiling,
even. Something
just
simple like that.
Gold and silver coins.
Whatever it is.
Right.
The idea is that you're going to die, and so you can never truly fulfill these desires. So it can only come in the eternal realm.
So it's very challenging for a religious person, though, or someone who's trying to represent religion to the world, to be able to get this meaning across without sounding condescending, without sounding patronizing, without sounding holier than thou. Because if usually you go up to someone, particularly in the world we live in, where the self is told to completely live itself, discover itself, enjoy itself, you know, own it on DVD. I don't know, all these different ways that provoke the love of owning, the love, and then suddenly someone says, you know what? You're going to die. It's all going to go. It's almost like it's antagonistic, right? So how do you strike that balance?
I think that message is quite negative. And I think it also portrays religion as somehow otherworldly, that it's not of this world. And I think there's actually some circumstances where passion and desire for what is in this world actually pushes people to success. And I think you can make an argument that this is part of kind of the individual drive.
Wait, sir, let's discuss what is success then, because you used
I'm talking about whether it's
success.
Political success, economic success, achieving what your goals are in this world.
Do you mean having power and money? Is that political and
For example, something like running for Congress or running for Parliament. That is a goal of this world.
You see, but Shadi, you have to be careful, because do you want us to desire a worldly goal for worldly sake, or desire a otherworldly goal that necessitates that we have a position in the world? And so that your desire, although outwardly seems to be for that economic success, for that political success, inwardly it's actually for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He gives you that success because as a Khalifa of Allah, and you know, I want to hear what you want to say about this, but as a Khalifa of Allah, as a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a trustee, as a successor of God on the planet, we are supposed to have the dunya, but in our hands and not in our hearts. Because it's almost like Allah entrusts us with the world. He gives us the world and He says, because you're going to fear me and love me in everything that you do, you take care of it. Because when you invent a theater, you'll make sure to patent it, like have a patent in a way in which you'll have no nudity shown on it, for example. As opposed to if you don't think about me, let alone maybe even not believe in me, you'll make a theater and you'll be so commerce driven, so money driven, money oriented, that you'll actually put nudity on it because it sells. And again, just as an example, I'm using nudity because we talked about it earlier.
Right, so I think that, say someone is running for Parliament, they should have the right intention. Their desire should be a pure one, to help the people around them, to promote justice, democracy.
But can that qualify as a desire for something in the world?
It could. It can be seen, it really depends. I mean,
semantics
in the end, the intention might be to please God. That might be one intention, which is obviously a positive one. So.
But exactly, because I think I agreed in spirit with you in what you said, but I think that it may be misunderstood or misconstrued to mean that sometimes it's positive to want the world for the world's sake, as opposed to want the world for the sake of Allah, to make sure that what the Lord, the creator of the world, wants to see happening in it, happens in it. I mean, do you see the distinction there?
Of course, yeah.
But I think also like promoting justice, democracy, the well-being of the people in your country.
In the world.
Those are things that please God.
Absolutely.
And those are things that are done for God's pleasure as well. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Absolutely. And in that sense, I think I fully agree with you.
Yeah,
وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. And that Allah commanded that when you judge between humanity, you judge with justice. You do so justly.
Along these lines, Mu'ayz, and tying in with your introduction, which you talked about postmodernism,
right.
There's a question that we could just put out there for discussion. Does God want us to actualize the ideals of Islam, justice, world peace, whatever it may be,
right.
In this world, or does He simply want from us the struggle?
Oh.
I mean, is our grand narrative as Muslims the fulfillment of these ideals, or just the path to them?
And then regardless of whether it happens or not, that's up to him. Very, very interesting. Well, let's look at this after the break, inshallah. It's a very interesting point. And although you may notice things may have deviated a little bit from the main topic of why is religion a turn-off, not looked at as an in thing nowadays, that still is the great theme of Stairway to Paradise, of these episodes. Because our intention is to look at religion in a way that does actually attract the human soul. Everything beautiful attracts, everything ugly repels you away from it. And so in general, I'm really happy it took us into this tangent, and we'll be back after the break to look at it, inshallah.
هل خرج النشيد الإسلامي عن الأطر والضوابط الشرعية التي وضعت له؟ إلى أي مدى تأثرت هذه الثروة الفقهية الكبيرة باختلاف أزمان المجتهدين؟
لكن القضية هي أن كثيرا من الناس يعاملون من وقع في بدعة معاملة المبتدع.
جيد.
وليس الحال كذلك.
لو كل الناس اختلفوا وقالوا أن شبهة عند فلان وعند آخر ليس بشبهة، فحينئذ يمنع، صار كله حرام.
ولا يحكم عليه بالكفر ما لم تقم عليه الحجة.
فإنه لم تجر العادة أن يقال للمباح إسلامي ولغير المباح غير إسلامي، لكن يقال هذا حلال هذا حرام انتهينا.
من قال أن الكليب هو محرم؟
يرى البعض أن التسمية بالإسلامي نوع من التسويق، اسمح لي، لبضاعة قد لا تكون جيدة فنيا.
فقه العصر يأتيكم في هذه الأوقات على قناة اقرأ. الدنيا بخير، برنامج يعرض أهم الإنجازات حول العالم من خلال تقارير ميدانية.
اكتشف خبراء صينيون نسخة للقرآن مكتوبة بخط اليد.
ويهدف الموقع إلى فتح نافذة يكشف حقيقة الادعاءات الصهيونية.
الجالية الإسلامية في البرازيل جالية كبيرة جدا.
الدنيا بخير يأتيكم في هذه الأوقات على قناة اقرأ.
Okay, Matthew, that's a very interesting comment because the grand narrative one, we left at the break saying that, because obviously as Muslims we're more concerned and we're commanded to be more concerned with the struggle itself, and we hope for the result because the result is a manifestation of beauty, it is God's will, but at the same time we don't try to bring about the result in a forceful manner. We're not coercive about it. I think it's Allah's prerogative, Islamically, to bring about results. But I see how this ties in with misrepresentation. I can totally see someone impatient with the situation in the world, not wanting to give people their time in absorbing religion, in absorbing the commands. It's not like you didn't, have a hard time praying the 5 prayers at first either, right? I mean, I'm here saying, let's pray 5 prayers. I spent about a year and a half praying all 5 at night. And I'm not saying do that, but I'm also saying if you do that, don't be disappointed if your intention is to go up the stairway to paradise, if your intention is to slowly grow, right? Because I would literally forget. I wasn't saying, hey God, why did you sanction the 5 prayers at 5 different times? You should have made them all at night. It's not like that at all. It's more like, oh my God, I didn't pray Subh, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and now it's Isha. Let's pray. And that's still my personal best. The way I see this tying into the greater scheme of this episode and of this show is that some people are impatient and they want the results, and they become outward oriented only. They want to see the actions done or else God is not pleased, and they don't have that space in the middle that allows for humanity to grow. That is a turnoff. If I'm approached by people like that, I will turn away from religion thinking that is religion. And to be honest, I will bluntly say this, I was turned off from religion thinking it was religion. I was actually turned away by people who were professing to be religious but weren't for most of my life. And at one point, when I finally met a person who embodied the faith, somebody who truly embodied the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Actually, this person was blind, and he was 19 years old. And he was sitting there, instead of complaining about his eyesight being taken away from him, wallahi, and this to me was a weird dichotomy. I didn't really understand. It was antagonistic. He was sitting there telling me how we are ungrateful to God and how he doesn't feel he thanks God enough. I looked at him and there were tears in my eyes, and my heart, you brought up the heart earlier, my heart was shaken, and it became aware of the presence of Allah. If you're going to be a religious person and you're not aware at a higher super-rational level of the presence of God, you're going to turn people away, you're going to turn them off. Misrepresentation.
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example of this kind of negative approach. There was one time I stumbled across a mosque in Washington, D.C., and I was about to start, praying.
Okay.
And someone there came up to me and he said, brother, your pants have to be at ankle level, otherwise your prayer is invalid. And I was just like, what are you talking about? And I mean, and I think it's just things like that that really, I think, capture. I mean, that's a kind of an extreme example.
But it happens.
But, yeah,
I'm sorry, it happens.
There's a better one. These two guys are praying next to each other, and after the prayer, the guy on the left looks at the guy on the right and says, I counted 8 mistakes in your prayer.
My God.
What does that say about the prayer?
Were you even praying? Or were you counting? It's amazing, and it tells about, you know what, Shadi, I think that's amazing because on the one hand, obviously there's room for wearing what you were wearing to prayer. It's not like you were wearing anything weird. There's room in Sharia for all of that in sacred law, but also, let's assume for a minute that whatever it is you were doing really was wrong. Like not a knee, ankle, whatever. Say you had a I hate religion written on your pants or something. Well, not that extreme, but you know what I mean? Some like tattoo, something.
Yeah.
Is that the first thing you talk to the person about?
No, I mean there's a certain way to approach it. You have to approach things in a very kind of easygoing way.
And do you have to say it on the spot? Do you not need to get to know the person and do it out of genuine love? Yeah. They don't have genuine love.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I'll tell you a really funny story, right? I remember I was in a taxi in Cairo, and in Cairo we get to know cab drivers' names and stuff. So his name was Sharif. We were driving back. I was with another friend of mine, driving back from Azhar to my place, and then a provocatively dressed woman, lack thereof, whatever, passes by, and it's not very normal in Cairo either, it's not like we're in the West. And she passes by, and my friend and I had just come out of a dars of tazkiyah, a lesson about purifying the heart. Wallahi, I'm not to brag or anything, but we weren't even concerned. We didn't even notice her, right? And then the cab driver, Sharif, literally looks at her, looks away, looks back and says, "Inti atruhi jahannam." You're going to hell. You're going to burn, And I was just, oh my God. And
well, maybe you shouldn't be staring in the first place.
Well, that's the one thing. But I'll tell you something funny, Shadi, because he parks the car. It was right before we arrived, and I didn't want to fall into the same trap of start becoming, condescending in the way I treat him. Say, no, you're going to burn for telling her that she's going to burn. So I purified my intention. I paused. I said, Sharif, can I just ask you something? He said, what? I said, did you look at her? And he said, I only got my first look. So I said, okay, now I'm going to ask you another question you have to really contemplate before you answer me. Was there a hidden desire in your heart? Did you want to look at her? He pauses, and then he says, Aywa, in Egyptian, actually yes. And then I say, now let me ask you the following, and this is even deeper. He says, what? I say, could it be that your nafs, yourself, your lower self, wanted to look at her so much, but because you knew it was haram, it was prohibited, you were so frustrated that you wanted to seek revenge from her. You wanted to bring it out at her, really. And so in an Islamic dress, the thawb, the dress of da'wah, the dress of calling to Allah, you brought out your revenge and frustration by saying, you're going to burn. And so the first neural association you get because you're angry is hell, and it's not da'wah at all. And he paused, he's like, you know what? Wallahi, he said, the kalam kibir awi. That's an Egyptian saying of this is heavy. And he said, I had no concern for her. Although it looked like I was doing da'wah. I tricked my own self into thinking I was calling her to Allah. I had zero concern for her. All I wanted was to basically, almost like, now this is my analogy, almost like a child, where when they don't get something, they want to break it. Because they'd rather either have it or just destroy it. And he just said that, subhanAllah, what are we supposed to do? And it's amazing because my friend got his contact and he started attending the lessons afterwards, and that was an opening. And one last thing I want to say about that is that I didn't want to fall into a vicious circle where he did a munkar. He did a detestable thing, a frowned upon thing in Islam, where he actually called her to Allah in a way that was unprophetic. It was actually pathetic, right? But had I patronized him, I would have committed another munkar. You're going to go to hell. And then someone else comes up and starts, and we get into this vicious circle, as opposed to having genuine awareness of Allah, of the one we are inviting to, tasting the beauty of Iman in our hearts. Those who look away with a correct intention, the Prophet ﷺ says, they taste the Iman in their hearts and it's sweet. At that moment you'd want to share the wealth, not curse the person.
Yeah. And I think your example points at a larger issue, that we're so focused on the superficialities, the outward appearance of religion, that we forget what's really important, that the essential aspect of a religion, the inner aspect, the heart.
The heart.
So I think, and that's focusing on, for example, my pants being at ankle level, or always focusing on dress, or is this person wearing this, is she not wearing that? That really takes us away, I think, from the beauty of our religion.
Absolutely, and I think that, you know, to close this, inshallah, but we want to have you on more episodes, is that basically I totally agree with you. A lot of the talks I give and some of the shows I've had are about the importance of the inward and how the outward actions exist and are sanctioned by Islam and will not be forfeited or let go of, or, you know, you don't compromise them at all, but they are means to a higher end, which is the purification of the heart, the awareness of God, the love of God. And I think religious people who are only outwardly religious sincerely need to ask themselves, you know, sincerely this question: do we really love God? Do we really love the divine? Do we really love the Creator? Or is religion a way for us to affirm our own identity by negating others? Do we have what psychologists call negative identity? Do we have to have everyone else damned for us to exist? Or is there a love for humanity? Allah tells the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We've only sent you and made you a messenger as a mercy to all the worlds. That's what the taxi driver realized. He said, I wasn't a mercy to all the worlds at that particular moment in time. It was all about my ego, and I projected my ego onto religion. That's what turns away people. When the ego comes in disguised as religion. But religion itself is obviously the most beautiful thing in the world. But that's the point we're going to try and prove in many episodes to come, inshallah, because it's going to be very difficult to eradicate this notion and all these neural associations that the lack of religion in religious people has caused. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us success, and we'll see you with another episode of Stairway to Paradise, and Assalamu alaikum.